Well, guys, it's 1:59, so if Peggy can't get her camera working, we'll just listen to her start the meeting, and then she's going to call on Marcia. So,
Okay. Yeah. Welcome, club members. And so let's start with Marcia.
okay, sounds good.
Oh, well, thank you, Peggy. I hope you get on so we can see your pretty face.
Oh, thank you.
I was asked to make the announcement about submitting your stories and poems, and I have to say, as one of the three editors, I'm just so pleased with what we've received so far. It's been really, really wonderful, and there's some very good writing. So thank you all to those who have submitted the stories or poems for Village Stories. Mm-hmm. We've already begun editing, as I said, but here are a few important reminders. You need to send all your entries as an attachment to the special email address for this in particular. It is Village Stories, no space between those two words, Village Stories LW@gmail.com. Very, very easy. So in the subject line, you need to write your name, the author's name rather, title, submission date, and then write VS for Village Stories 2021. Very easy. I'm going to repeat that in a few minutes. Okay. Your Word document for stories and poems must follow these guidelines. The title, size 22, bold and centered in the middle. And under the title, you will write by your name, size 16 font. I think Nancy Brown, who was unable to be here today, has already passed this information out to everybody in the club. All right, now the document text, the Arial font is size 16, that's 1/6. Save your document in Word with the same name as you put in your subject line. Author name, title, submission date, VS 2021. Very easy. Okay. Now you may submit more than one piece, but all your pieces cannot total in words more than 2,500 words. So if you want to send in 6 poems, if they're more than 2,500 words, we have to delete one of them. Okay. All right. July 31. That's the final submission date for your stories and poems. And after that, the authors will receive a PDF copy of the book before publication to make sure that we have included just what you wrote, exactly as you wanted and as we have edited it. You get the final say. If you don't like our edits, you get the final say. Now, new topic. You can join the cover contest. July 31 is the deadline to submit ideas for the front and the back covers. One idea per person for the front and back covers. And you need to submit your entries either as a JPG or a Word document. August 1, 2021, one of the Village Stories team members will send an email to club members with all the front and back cover submissions, and then you as club members get to vote. You select your favorite, and you send your vote by email to villagestorieslw@gmail.com. Easy to remember. Okay, now for all authors, please send your bio picture and your bio information again to the same email, villagestorieslw@gmail.com. Send your bio information as a Word document and title it Bio Info and your name. So I don't think we put any limit on number of words. Am I correct, Peggy or Sunshine? Have we on the bio? We don't have a number of a quota, do we?
Let's say 150 words.
150. Okay. Okay. That's enough to get quite a bit about your life in your bio if you want to share it all.
Right.
So that's the end of my announcement. Do you have any questions? Pretty easy, really. We've tried to make it as easy as possible.
Thank you, Marcia.
Okay.
Well, I thank you, Marcia. I just can't get on. But Marcia's got to go. She's got an important assignment. But I want to welcome Danielle. So welcome, Danielle.
Danielle.
There she is.
And Peggy, I
I'm
wanted to
here.
welcome a new member, my daughter Denise, who's holding her granddaughter, my great-granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
Oh, great. Yeah. Welcome, Denise. Right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I see her now. Yeah, I wonder about the author of these sagacious essays. Hi, Denise. And so, welcome, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. How do I get on sound with you guys?
You're on.
You're on.
Yeah.
We can all hear you, Daniela.
Oh, okay.
You
I
are
don't
back.
have to push anything.
You are backlit, so it's hard to see you.
Right. Yeah, we see your back.
Is that better?
Slight improvement.
A little bit.
Lights, action.
Maybe you pull the shades behind you.
I don't have shades, unfortunately. My window faces an atrium.
Well,
But it's okay. You're not missing much. Seriously.
we'll go ahead.
Let me see.
I told Daniela to speak about things that really interest us about journalism and the media. And I know you'll all find this fascinating, because who doesn't want to be in the news? Except for criminals, of course.
It's getting better. Good.
Well, let me know when you want me to start, or
Go
if somebody
ahead.
wants to start out with a question, that works too.
Yeah, Daniela, we can see you a little better now. So I don't know what you did. It's still, you still got the backlighting, but we can see a little bit better. So
Go ahead.
It's my magic presence. It comes through every time. Yeah. So, where should I start? Except that, like many of you who've come to something they love later in life, I came to journalism through a complete fluke. I had no idea that I was going to wind up a writer. And it happened if something can be convoluted and both straightforward at the same time, you're looking at me, seriously. And because English is my third language, I grew up till age 6 speaking Polish exclusively. Then but even though I was born in Berlin, and then all of a sudden somebody got the idea, oh, the little brat is going to go to school next year and she doesn't speak a word of German. Ah, okay. So they turned me loose on the playground, and my linguistic skills developed rapidly after getting a few buckets of sand in my face because I talked funny. And these buckets of sand somehow followed me, because all of a sudden I found myself in the United States was school English. And again, I had to jump right in and became a high schooler and graduated high school within a year. And then I was expected to go to college. Well, in the old days, what you had to do in college was write. And that's the one thing I could not do. And my major at the time was linguistics, and I was an emphasis on French and art. But papers were impossible. So I got more F's than I could shake a stick at, till I just had enough of it and decided to become a flight attendant. And that sort of got me into people skills. And slowly but surely, I literally learned to make myself understood and converse with people, get my points across, and get my way quite often too. But still nothing about writing. I was an artist, I was painting, I was photographing. Later on, I learned how to make stained glass, nothing about writing. But in 1969, I went to Woodstock. And in Woodstock, I was all of a sudden thrust a tape recorder, a pen, and a pad. And a Washington Post reporter said to me, my boyfriend was a photographer there at the time, and she said, I can't be in the same place, in two places at the same time. Go into town and talk to people and ask them questions how they are dealing with this influx of this humanity. And so I'm standing there and saying, okay, fine, don't forget to push the button, you know how a pen works. And lo and behold, the reporter used my notes, and that was the end of that. But still, I didn't see myself as a reporter. That didn't happen. I'm scrolling forward very, very quickly. After I came to California and went down to finally seriously study art. In those days, and this was in the early to mid 80s, and they had passed a law that you had to take a so-called W class. That means that writing had to be a component in whatever you did. And so I was drawing and painting, and I had to write about what we saw and what we did. And all of a sudden, my teacher gives me back my papers, and her eyebrows are in her hairline, saying, Jesus Christ, you write, girl. And I said, I write, yeah, well, yeah, you're making. But then I decided to take, quote unquote, a magazine production class. And magazine production, guess what? Involves writing. And I said, no, I'm not doing this. And we're halfway down the stairs. I figured, okay, Walsh, what you going to do now? So I marched back up and figured, well, we'll give it a shot. What can happen? Nobody gets shot for writing badly. Well, my first story out, I won a first prize. And for my illustrations, I got an honor. And that kept going on because we had a teacher who loved entering contests. And I was having these trinkets all of a sudden, a journalism ring and a placard, and for what? Writing. And then I caught fire. I changed my major, transferred to Cal State Fullerton. They have stink miserable journalism department, but I figure I'm gonna box it through. And by a fluke, that is too long to get into, I got a scholarship to Chapman College, or Chapman University, as it already was. And I majored in journalism and just flew. I don't know how it happened or why, but it happened. I graduated and got divorced just about at the same time, which means I had to earn a living. So I started working at Barnes and Nobles at night, and then started pitching stories to freelance. And one of my freelance stories took place in Garden Grove. There was a little community paper, the Garden Grove Globe, which no longer exists. And they liked my freelance stories, so they hired me on staff. And now I was literally from school into the street. And mind you, in those days, I was 49 when I started all this. So I was doing things that a 22-year-old cub reporter does. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to work that hard in my life again. We did the community during the day, and we had to go and be and troll for stories. Then we had city council meetings to cover. The then mayor of Garden Grove, by Bruce Boxleiter, if memory serves. An SOB of the finest order, a thoroughbred, who had a habit of picking on reporters. Now, having gone through divorce and God knows how many years of school, I wasn't taking any guff from him either. So I stood up and told him, contact my editor if you have a, and that finished that with him. The worst part of the whole deal was school board meetings. You know, you want to talk about acrimony and bickering back and forth and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, 3 years of this, and all of a sudden there came liberation in the form of me getting laid off. Last hired, first fired kind of thing. And they laid off a whole bunch of reporters. Now what? Well, the other thing in my arrow, in my so-called quiver, was that I was interested in the arts. And I had done my internship at the Bauhaus Museum. And so I was perfectly put in position to start writing about the arts. And so I wrote about art for the Orange County Register for 10 years. And that was fabulous. Going to shows, talking to artists, and besides the Register, you can't just live on one client. I also wrote for magazines. And I kept an art blog, if you guys ever want to look it up. It's Danielle Walsh, art writer, at blogspot.com, or just type in Danielle Walsh or Danielle B. Walsh, and it actually spits out, quite a bit of my work. So I got into this basically by luck, on pluck and luck, not necessarily always in that order. And I pitched stories by importance, where's the show, where's it located? Because the Register did not want to deal with private galleries. So I had to stick with the institutions, which was actually cool because Cal State Fullerton had a very good art department and art gallery. And I got to cover shows and interview artists and go to shows. And so my social life was an added benefit to this. Dating, not so much. Artist, whenever an artist came on to me, there was always the question, he wants me to write about him. And sure enough, 75% of the time I was right. So the one thing you have to be careful for, as a journalist, writer, whatever, be careful who you talk to and why. The other things also, I was very interested in photography. So in 2003, I got a job at the Laguna Beach Independent, and they expected me to take pictures. And all of a sudden I was thrown out into the art world in general. It was no longer just visual, but all of a sudden I had to do theater, I had to do dance, I had to do music, the art festivals, and anything in the arts. You're all are familiar with Laguna Beach. I had to cover it all. So flexibility is a real, and curiosity are two really good well, God, no, I'm missing a word. Very good characteristics to have. But the brain here, I noticed lately, the brain is now no longer 49, but it's 76. So, like every once in a while, yes, I have to actually look things up and dig around for words. So forgive me for that.
No problem.
And okay, so if you guys have any questions, I know that Peggy had asked, you know, for example, how do you get published? Connections, connections, connections. Make yourself seen and you know, if possible, heard. How to write a query letter, at least in the older days. I don't know exactly how they do it right at this very minute. Everything, of course, is online. When I first started, you had to write very elaborate query letters in which you outline the scope of the story. And of course, the 5 W's, who, what, where, when, and who cares, all had to apply. And then it was up to the editor to say, okay, fine, we'll take it. We need 1,000 words, you get $25 or something ridiculous of the sort. I started writing for $50 a story. And your deadline is whatever, but you get in. Now, I remember still my first story for the Register. First of all, it took me like 5 months to get to the editor. And the editor was a groovy guy. You know, we got along because we were both sailors. But when it came to the arts and everything else, he was actually an idiot. So my first story was titled Unmasking Picasso. And this was about a museum director who held a lecture illustrating how Picasso had ripped off African art basically. And that was the gist of his thesis at the time. If anybody knows the Demoiselle d'Avignon, the women of easy virtue in this multiple portrait where they're all having sort of African heads, he used that as an example, and some of his other forms also. You can believe in that or not, but the thing is, my beloved editor shortened a paragraph in which I qualified his statement. And he took the qualifications out for space. So of course the letters to the editor said, who is this idiot who claims that Picasso was solely, you know, influenced by African art? And not only that, they had flipped the accompanying photo backwards. And I'm going to this writers' conference, you know, proud as a peacock, with about 10 papers under my arm, in my very best suits. And my story is an absolute hash job. And I didn't even know it then. So needless to say, not a very auspicious beginning, but the other quality of a journalist is also, if somebody throws you out the window, then walk in the door, or, you know, vice versa. So you keep on going. And over time, this gaffe was forgotten. The only problem was that this aforementioned museum director, I also still knew from Washington, D.C., because, believe it or not, I have served in my young life quite a lengthy stint as one of 3 female barbers in all of Washington, D.C. And this former museum director was one of my clients by coincidence. Yeah, you're right. So it was very, very interesting, you know, getting some people to believe in my miraculous intellectual transformation from service worker to college graduate and actually working reporters. It was interesting. But you know, the beauty of the job is too that, you know, it wasn't quite as fast paced with the internet and everything as it is now. You could actually learn as you went. If I had time, I could see an exhibit more than once, or I could talk to somebody about it. And I remember one time there was an exhibit at the Art Museum, and I considered myself fairly sophisticated. I didn't get that thing for the life of me. It was an art collection by two psychologists. Okay. And a friend of mine, doesn't, who's an art teacher, just happened to walk through, and he said, Daniela, you look puzzled. And he says, well, and he started talking. And by the time, we walked through the exhibit, a light went on, and I could actually, I said, yeah, right, okay, yeah. Then I went back, reprocessed, what I saw, and could actually write about it, and got fairly good reviews for it too. And that's one of the joys. Like I got good reviews for my writing. I mean, nobody ever said, Jesus Christ, was this hack doing here? Like somebody hand her knitting needles or something. And so you keep on learning, and it's a constant learning process, which is the beauty of the whole thing. Now, how you get into it, cold, it's not easy. I mean, I went to school for it, and I had a very, 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 very competent advisor, and who then also helped opening doors for us. So if you know somebody already in the field, that's the best way to start and say, hey, or you have a story idea. Let's say tomorrow, I'm going to have a story in the Globe about Margaret Perlman. Some of you might know her. She's 102 and a very interesting lady. And that's a story that sort of developed out of another story when I did the story on Bauman. And both of them are over 100, and both of them, I asked them if they have brain cells they could possibly spare. And that's, get out there and talk to people. And also, you have to have writing samples. Now, let's talk about writing. There's a different way of writing, and I've turned them upside down a couple of times. Writing for magazine gives you much more leeway as far as stylistic expression is concerned than newspaper writing. Newspaper writing is a very pretty much set in its way process. Here is the AP style book, and that's what most people, it's just think how you abbreviate this, how you describe this, how you describe diplomats, how you describe cities, how everything, and that's what editors go by. Why? It's a sign of a trained writer, basically. And that hasn't changed. A lot of editors don't have time. They want to, if they have a copy in front of them, they don't want to sit there and correct, the full writing out of, let's say, Illinois into the short form. There's just, you have to give them a copy that they can go over, maybe change something stylistically. Every editor has their own style and, their own expectation, how a sentence should flow. And if you're lucky, you're on the same page, literally, and things go. If you have an editor who has a penchant for changing your copy and rewriting things his or her way, not so good, because every writer has not only the style book, but what you call a voice. And this is besides just the facts, man. But there are several ways of presenting the facts. Truthfully, of course. But then everybody has their own writing style. And if that doesn't jive with your editor, then you may have a problem. And some editors are better than others. I had editors, for example, who actually wrote mistakes into a couple of stories. For example, I did a theater review for the South Coast Repertory, about the South Coast Repertory. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this column in Riviera magazine, which I had a monthly column with when I was still listening. And I look at this and I said, I don't remember talking to this guy. And mind you, I was a lot younger then. I figure I would have remembered talking to a department director there. No, my editor had written that in, and the man in question called me up and said, Daniela, I don't remember talking to you. And so, yeah, he had just written this in. And then he goes, my editor at the time, who shall remain nameless because he's still in the field, he says, oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, hell, my byline is under that. And that's a really important, anything that your name is under. And then, yeah, you're going to get it for it. They're not going to call the editor. They're going to call you something. And in a small place like Laguna Woods, for example, I make sure that everything is on the up and up because I'd like to show my face around the swimming pool one of these days again. So back to where, how do you get a story published? There's something called in the Writer's Guide, and I haven't seen a new one in ages because I've scaled down quite a bit. That gives you the names of publications, what they specialize in, and whom to contact, for example, and also pay scales and what have you. I'm assuming, very bad word in journalism, by the way, that people don't write what they don't know, at least in intelligence circles. So if you have a field of expertise, concentrate on that, especially when you're starting, because you also feel the more.
This is very strange.
And what? I'm here. Anything wrong?
Yeah, go ahead.
What?
Somebody started to say, yeah, Daniela, somebody started to say something and then either cut themselves off or didn't finish their thought.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm all yours. Just I mean, I'm going totally off script here.
Hey,
I wrote down what I wanted to say, and then all of a sudden I started ad-libbing because I didn't really, want it to look like I'm reading off a sheet kind of thing.
could you tell us what was your most compelling story?
They were, honestly, I've been doing this now for close to 30 years. There were several. And one of my favorites was when they started the Artist Village in Santa Ana, because that part of town at the time, where the new courthouse is now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the building site was surrounded by a construction fence, a wooden construction fence of several panels. And the city invited about 30 artists to each create a different panel in that construction fence. And around the courthouse was a fairly gang-infested kind of decaying area. And they decided to turn this into an artist quarter. And there was a building called the Santora building, which was fairly decayed, which they turned into individual artist studios. And that was so much fun and so fantastic because there were always new stories coming out of there. And then there was the Orange County Orange County Center for Contemporary Art, which was a building that once upon a time repaired carousels and circus equipment, and they turned that into an art center. And then there was the Grand Central building, which was, when I first saw it, graffitied even on the inside, and the gangsters were hanging out the window. And they turned that into an offshoot of Cal State Fullerton's art department for master's degree students, and had visiting artists and a box theater and a gallery. And there were always events there. And so that was an ongoing stream. I mean, never a dull moment. And at that particular time, I had a very stammer who just, let me run loose. And so that was was one of my favorite times. Single story, God, I can't, actually hear the Jan Bauman story was fascinating, because she had relatives on one side that dated back to the composer Gustav Mahler, and Austria and the whole Jewish diaspora. So that was a really, really cool story to do. I really enjoyed photographing her, and she also was a fellow stained glass maker. So I had a hard time peeling myself out of that house. When the story, you can still find it. There is something called muckrack.com, which I just discovered about an hour ago. And that has at least the leads to a lot of my stories in there. So if you guys want to do some just past reading, that I've done for the Register and or the Globe here. And like I said, my blog spot was a lot of fun. That's a good way for you to get noticed too. Go to, start an account, start the blog, and people start noticing you. That's a good way to do it. And like I said, carry that style book, learn the essentials from that, and get to know other writers. I mean, I went to writers conferences. I went every year, and it was really, really rewarding, also catching up with old friends. And just recently, an old colleague of mine has contacted me if I wanted to write for them. We competed for a job at one point together, but it was a friendly competition. And so he invites me now to the staff meetings for Voice of OC. He's the arts and culture editor. So I'm trawling around for stories for that. And that's the other thing too, is having your ear to the ground and seeing what's going on. Now, Peggy said, asked me something in an email, what's acceptable, for a story and what's not. There really is no such thing. Just keep focused on the publication that you're aiming for. Read that publication, see how they write, what they write, and find something not slavishly like it, but something in a similar vein. And when in doubt, pitch it. The worst they can say is no. By pitching, I mean contact the editor and write this letter of inquiry. Nowadays, it would be an email, and have some writing samples handy.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, the reason Daniela wrote our story was because I sent a copy of our book to the Globe. And
yeah, that's Peggy. That's how we got to meet each other. That's right. Now, I couldn't write a poem if you held a gun to my head. It's just not. I'm really a nonfiction girl, which is, well, when I was in college, I was mucking around with it because we all sat around in coffee houses, and it helped to have long hair and knew how to write poetry. So, but
I remember that.
yep.
Yeah.
Daniela, there was a couple questions here, and they were sent through the chat. And I know you probably haven't had a chance to look at them because you've been covering. But Sunshine asked if the name you were talking to was Luck Rack, the one that you found an hour ago.
Yeah, like muck raking.
Okay, yeah, that's the one she was asking about. And then
Yeah.
one of the other questions was from Cheryl, and she asked if you've had your work translated, and or have you also used a literary agent?
No, no. I have not attempted any sort of books, and now usually editors want, newspaper and magazine editors, media editors don't usually deal with agents. It's just another in between step that nobody has time for, and it's in comparison, it's a very short process. They either take you or they don't. And sometimes, yes, you get a story that takes up a couple of months. I'm a procrastinator. That's my middle name, procrastinata. And so if I get a long-term story, it usually gets written the week before it's due. So I tend to avoid them.
So are you a freelance writer? Are you a freelance?
I have a hard time. I'm a freelancer, that's correct.
Yeah. I also read your story in the Globe about Joel Goldstein. That was really interesting.
About Joel Goldstein?
The
No, that wasn't about him. He contributed to it. He provided information, but the photography story was about a multitude of photographers, the camera club and the yearly contest that they have. And Joel Goldstein was one of my sources. So the main coordinator points me to something. So once you get a story, then find out if it's about a museum or whatever, in my case, find out who does the public relations. Because if they're any good, the information that you get from them, and they will endeavor to get you together with the right people, because their job is to get publicity. And so if they know what they're doing, that's half your battle right there. I mean, what we call sources is very important. This writing is a solitary process, but reporting is the opposite.
Daniela, you told us about the Associated Press, the style book.
Yeah.
Did you also use the Chicago Manual of Style? Because that's another one that
on rare occasions for magazine work, sometimes yes, but it's okay. Not as often. It's more used in literary circles.
Okay. And I think there's another one called the writer's market, just as there's a poet's market in terms of other resources.
That's the one that I was referring to. The writer's market is gives you the sources of who does what and why.
Right. Thank you.
And I've stuck. I mean, you want to eat. I eat very well, as you can see. Stick with what you know. It makes your life so much easier. I stay away from politics. I stay away from council meeting of any sort, and anything that contains a large amount of numbers.
Okay.
For example, or statistics or anything of that sort. I mean, if you want to chase me away, just give me a bunch of statistics. So my fave is really reviewing, and because I've been not really trained, but surrounded with art. When I was going to school still in Europe, as well as part of the curriculum curriculum. And even though half of Berlin was destroyed, you know, we still had our books, and you know, my father played piano, and I drew and painted, and he knew how to draw, and so I just grew up in an environment where the arts were really important, and that actually carried me a long way later in life.
Danielle, I
And
think it's really interesting that you've been able to combine your love of arts and photography, and that the writing actually was able to enhance both of those, because it gave you something, quote, practical to do with your love for the arts.
right,
You know what I mean? And I think that was
right.
a very lucky thing and a good choice on your part to get involved with that, because it gave you
You
opportunities.
know, it was, you know, I'm not religious, but I call it a blessing.
Mhm.
Because I was at a point where my marriage was going south and things were changing rapidly. And I figured, what in the blazes are you going to do? And you got 2 children to support on top of everything. So packing myself off to school, you know, just at the right time. And I was very, very happy in school. All this, you know, when I hated it when I was young, I mean, college is wasted on the young, on most of them, in my opinion. But the second or third time around, if you will, I was just on fire. And I saw a question there whether or not I still do stained glass. I haven't done it in a very long time. My hands won't tolerate it anymore. Yeah, arthritis is setting in, and my fingers just aren't. And you know, lead and spray glue and Farrier's nails and all that. And for copper foil, I don't have the dexterity anymore. But I still love it. I kept my own, the few windows that I made for the house, I actually kept. And one of these days, I put them all up.
So what's the publisher's favorite subject? Any idea?
What?
What is most newspapers' favorite subject besides crime?
Most newspapers. I don't think they're supposed to have one unless they're specialized in something.
I see.
I mean, you know, the register, what's left it, is supposed to be a sort of general, you know, a generalist. There's some publishers that, you know, that I wrote for something called Art and Living, for example, and this is what that looked like. Unfortunately, there's like many they ceased to publish, but this was a really fun gig because I was in almost every. I was in every issue they published quarterly, and it got me into Los Angeles. And you know, when I still wanted to drive into Los Angeles, I don't do that anymore. And it was fun because you know, I got to meet a lot of the Los Angeles artists and the old Pharaoh's Gallery boys, and you know, and Moses, who just died, and also his son Andy, for example, and Ed Ruscha, and a lot of people like that. And these people that I've been reading about, all of a sudden having them sit in front of me, that was pretty cool. And I've also been very lucky that the majority of people that I dealt with were really decent people and interesting people. They were nice. I very rarely, you know, encountered any sort of hostility unless I gave somebody a bad review, and I sometimes did, because you know, if somebody produce garbage, then that was going to be treated like that. When I wrote a review, I was honest, but I also tried to keep in mind my own limitation. And having made art and photography, I knew how much goes into it. And so you sometimes had to tread very lightly around artists.
Danielle, obviously you're still freelancing. Are you also still
Yeah.
doing creative art on your own, or photography for your own interest?
I just got myself a really sweet camera, a Fuji 210, and that works very much. It's a digital, but it works like cameras that the controls outside, and nothing is menu driven, which is great. And I'm taking emeritus classes in photography right now with Laura Hoffman, who I highly recommend. She's a great photographer. She loves to teach, and when she critiques, she is gentle but right on the money.
She here at
Hello?
the village.
Hi. Have you reviewed the arts festival
In
on
Laguna
Broadway at Laguna Beach?
Oh yeah, when I worked for the Laguna Beach Independent for 9 years. So I covered it and covered it and covered it till I had enough almost. I mean, I loved it, but like the pageant of the masters, after a while, I think, oh God, okay, fine, another moving picture. You do get jaded sometime, I'm sorry to say, I have a short fuse sometimes when jaded, but no, I covered it till I actually quit shortly before I had my heart surgery. And they also grew allergic to paying us all of a sudden. And that's an allergy I can't tolerate.
Understandable.
Yep.
Well, I've said about I just about said my say, and not to bore you guys. So I'll take questions.
Any more questions? From Cheryl. Awesome interview. Yeah, it is an awesome interview, Daniela. And we want to thank you. You're awesome. And also, we want to thank you for putting us through. That was fantastic. And keep up the good work. We enjoy your
thank you so
stories.
much.
Yeah, Danielle, I also appreciated that you were able to bring in some of the experience you've had with writing and journalism and incorporate the other arts with it, because it's great when you have that kind of crossover, because a lot of us are influenced by more than one subject, but it's really talked about in terms of how you integrate them. So I appreciate what you were able to tell us today.
Exactly.
Thank you. I mean, again, I feel really, really blessed that I was able to do that. But it's just, I mentioned my internship to you guys at the museum. Well, I was in my last year of journalism at Chapman, and we had to have an internship. And I had, I was in my 40s and had 2 teenage daughters at that time. And my very, very wise advisor by the name of Susan Paterno said, Daniela, if I send you down to the Register or the Times, they're gonna rip you to pieces. And because I was carrying 15 units and raising two very, very independent teenagers, and had a husband with whom I could barely communicate with. So she said, you know what? We have to find you something in the arts. And then, as it happens, the woman that I was working for also at Chapman, you know, because I was work study, that was part of my scholarship. She said, you know, I know somebody at the Bowers in their PR department. Let's see if they have any use for you. And I walked in there and they just about ate me alive. They say, oh my God, you can write. Yes. And, you know, there I could really write my own ticket, which was wonderful. Huge help. So like I said, luck, pluck, you know, you fill in the blanks.
Well, thank you, Danielle. That
Thank you,
was
Danielle.
fascinating. Yeah.
You're very welcome, and good luck with your stories for the 2021 edition. I really loved the first one, and there was some really good stuff there. And if I ever learn to write poetry or something, or write a fantasy story, maybe I will someday, because my mom had a very interesting life. Now, my late mom, but she wouldn't talk much about it. A lot of people didn't want to talk about World War II and what she did, and she worked for Radio Free Europe, and she was a reporter too, but fell into it by accident. And I always said, Mom, if you don't tell me what happened, one day after you're gone, I'm going to sit there and write a salacious novel about you. Well, you know, yeah, the vibe is just changing now. No. So
I find it interesting that neither you or your mom, you know, knew how you should get into journalism, but somehow or other you both found your way there. So there must be something in the genes.
there was. My mother also had the extreme good fortune of being very beautiful when she was young. And she, for Radio Free Europe, she was Polish from Warsaw, and there were a lot of Polish military and Eastern European military that fled the Russians. And a lot of them came back with quite a bit of information, which my mother was very clever at extracting from them. And that's how that happened. She was completely bilingual, Polish and German, and so she could do these interviews. And she also was absolutely blessed with very understanding bosses, and it was an interesting job. The only thing she couldn't do is take a train or drive out of Berlin, because the Russians definitely had an eye on her.
Mm-hmm. Well, Daniela, you're more than welcome to submit your stories to Village Stories 2021. So please do. We'd love to read them.
And
I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't know if I can do it this year. I've got so much on my plate, but also dealing with this accursed association and their repair policies, and that's an alteration. Oh, don't get me started. And so I'm dealing with all that, and some medical stuff next year, perhaps.
Well,
but
okay.
I'll definitely, Peggy, let's definitely stay in touch.
We'll keep you
and everybody else,
on
please.
our list.
And if anything comes up, I beg your pardon?
We'll keep you on our member list.
Oh, absolutely, please. Absolutely. Good. And everybody keep up the good work, and thank you for all your help, Sunshine, and everybody. And it's a pleasure to meet everybody that I haven't met before.
And thank you,
gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate you thinking of me.
So here are a few questions for you guys. Do you read the Publishing Club news? Every day I send articles to Publishing Club news. Do you read them? Does anybody read them?
No, I haven't received them.
Huh, interesting. They're on our site. Does anyone else read them?
Peggy, I read them, but it's occasional when I have the time. And that's a serious issue for me, because I'm in so many different writing groups, and there's Zooms. I have Zooms that sometimes I get 3 of them and it's all at the same time.
Oh,
So I can't do them,
Yeah.
but it just tells you a little bit that that's one of my issues. And then I have to have time to write. So for me, I do check it, but I can't say I check it like every day, every time an announcement comes out. It may take me a while to get to stuff. But if I have a gap, when I don't have everything going on at once, and I start going through all my messages, I do go through them. So I guess the short answer is I do when I have the time available.
good, good,
So it's still important to get him, but I can't say that I do it all the time.
good.
That's
I'll
just
keep
me.
sending them in
Okay.
that case. Because I wondered, I thought maybe no one ever even looks at them. But if you do, good. I'll keep sending them.
Yeah.
Now, another comment. You all realize it's storytelling in September, the 3rd Wednesday of September. So start getting your story ready. But I'm not sure if it's going to be Zoom or at the clubhouse. I called Clubhouse 3 today and I got a message that it was closed, but it told me to leave a message. So what do you think? Should we have it at the clubhouse or should we Zoom?
Here's
Any
my,
comment?
I will give my thought here. September, even though it sounds like it's a long way away, is not very far away. And in order to be able to advertise it, we can advertise an event that we're having, if we're having it in the clubhouse, 2 months in advance with flyers out and so forth. Well, if we're not sure that we can do this September, back up to August, back up to July. So if we don't know in July that we for sure can do this, we need to plan it for Zoom. My second part of my answer is that when you do it at Zoom, you are basically focusing. I have the person in full screen. You're focusing on that person. And it seemed to work really well last year. So I would like to have a poll of the members and say, which way do you want to do it? Because maybe there is an advantage in doing it in Zoom. Okay, I'm done.
I agree. I prefer Zoom because there are no distractions. You have to focus on the person speaking.
I agree. I agree. And plus, we have the summer to go through with mask or no mask, and who knows what sort of things are going to be lurking around come September.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Perhaps by then my camera will work.
Yeah, we'll get that going. We got to get that going.
Now, also, I still have about 20 copies of Village Stories 2020. Let me know if you want one. And also, I want to use Rama Gopal's Books Handmade in India as for India, for their crisis there. So if you're interested in buying Rama Gopal's book, let me know. I'll mail it to you. It's $25, or you can come to Clubhouse 3 and I'll meet you. And that will go to India.
Sounds good.
Next point. I have so many books, your books, several copies of some of your books. So I thought I'd start a raffle. What I do is give you each a number and then announce the winner once a month. What do you think?
That'd be cool.
Yeah, sounds neat.
Okay. And then also, I hope you all watched Ellen Maybe's video. It is precious. It's amazing. So if you didn't watch her video, which the subject is her poem, contact Ellen. Ellen, are you here?
Did she go? Oh,
Did she leave?
She's still showing up, but she has her she's on mute, so we don't know.
Her video is so good. Did anyone else see it?
I'm going to. I haven't. I just got the word on it. I'm going to, but I haven't yet.
You'll be amazed.
Is there a link to her? Was it recorded? Is there a link to her presentation?
Well, she's got a couple of things. That one is from her her music that she did with her friend. So she's got that one. But then I just got a message about one of her poems being taken from music. But that message just came in yesterday. So I haven't had time to look at it. So she's got a couple of things on there.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
we can share that.
Can I interject for just a moment? I have to run. I've got something else going. I've got to talk to my insurance agent. Would you excuse me, please?
Certainly.
sure.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you, Daniela.
Oh,
Great
thank you.
present.
Thank you. I'm very flattered to be invited. Thank you so much.
And this is recorded, so you will get the link to watch it if you want.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Sunshine.
You're welcome.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And one last comment. Please, please do not send emails from the publishing club to spam. You can't imagine how much trouble that made for us. So don't send any letter I sent you from the publishing club to spam, please.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Okay, I
All
will
right.
be recording. This is recorded. It will go out when it is done. Sometimes it's fast, sometimes it's slow. So when it's done, I will send it to you all. And if anybody has anything else to say before I end this, let me know.
See you guys in June.
All right.
Maybe.
Have a great month.
Maybe. Pleasure seeing y'all. Here I got all dressed up for nothing.